So, hi everyone. I'm Vicki Vollweiler, and I'm the founder of College Financial Prep. Tonight, we're going to be talking about divorce and college planning. And it is a big, huge concern to many, many people. Also joining us tonight is Michael Cohen from Michael's Mediation. Michael, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm a divorce mediator out of Illinois. I've got a CPA, so I've put three kids through college myself, and it is painful. And I do a lot of work with the finances and the parenting plans, but Vicki and I know each other, and she asked me to join, so here I am.
Thanks, Michael. So a lot of you may know me. I do a lot of college financial aid work. I help people with their financial aid applications, putting together college lists, making sure that there are financially friendly schools on that college list. I help people with filing appeals, with scholarship searches, negotiating with the colleges, student loan acquisition. And I also have a college advisor and an essay specialist on my team that also helps out with college admissions and college planning, college funding. So we do it all. But tonight we're focusing specifically on separated and divorced parents in college planning. I am a divorced parent. I've been through the process. I'm about to go through the process again. I have a 10th grader myself. And it is or can be very, very different from our married friends. It is definitely could be a more complex process. I mean, certainly because of all the emotions involved and naturally discussing the financials of paying for college. But there may also be extra steps to take um, because of the family dynamics that will help you save more money. So there are always lots of questions that come up, and today we're going to try to answer some of those questions that you may not even know that you have. And again, feel free to stop us as we're talking, as we're discussing. There will also be Q&A at the end. Again, this is very, very informal tonight. So just want everybody to have a chance to learn about the process as you're preparing. So why don't we dive in? One of the first questions that comes up, or that I see very, very often: college is not in their divorce agreement, or the parents just haven't agreed what they're going to do. It's how they're going to split the bill, how
Mhm.
they're even going to pay the bill. Do they have a 529 plan? How do they even split the 529 plan? So they want to know what to do. Honestly, in situations like that, the kids are still going to go to college. Even if it's not in your divorce agreement, you still need to start talking about it. Just because it may have been left out doesn't mean that it's not something that you're going to face. College is handled differently by all 50 states. The rules don't apply to, different states. I'm in New York, Michael's in Illinois, and the rules for those two states different from one another as they do for the rest of the country. Um, Regardless, I'm sure we've all heard that, we want to do what's in the best interest of the kids. And I think that certainly applies to paying for college. Um, I'm going to say that and Michael, please jump in anytime. You know, when you get divorced, it's because there's a breakdown in communication. But oh my God, is communication important when it comes to planning for whether it's communicating with the co-parent, communicating with the children, and setting goals. It's important to start discussing and maybe creating a new agreement specifically for college if it had been left out before. If the two parents can work it out on their own and perhaps have it notarized, even better. Otherwise, if one parent refuses to discuss, there is always the option to go back to college, if go back to an attorney if college is recognize. What word am I looking for, Michael? If college is normally part of the agreement in your state.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, you could go back to court. That's the last choice. But like normally, like when you approach, like a lot of you, some of I've seen have kids in high school. If you haven't had it in your agreement yet, what are the key decisions? College choice, College funding. If in the states where they allow the children to have some debt, do you both agree that they should carry some debt and have some skin in the game? And how much do you want them to have? And of course, the proportion of funding between the parents is one of the most critical decisions. Where I work, a lot of times we look at proportional to income. But if there's a lot of options, and Vicki, you could speak to some of the other states and other rules.
So sometimes with college, I'll tell you about what New York does first. So New York, they hold you to what they call a SUNY standard, State University of New York. They understand that the child should go to college and not be penalized because the parents choose to get divorced. So both parents have to pay their pro rata share up to a SUNY standard. What does pro rata mean? If one parent earns $60,000 and the other earns $40,000, one parent may be paying 60% of college costs and the other parent may be paying 40% of college costs. And again, that's up to a SUNY. But what happens if the 12th grader doesn't want to go to an in-state college? They want to go wherever, someplace out of state. They want to go to a private school or an out-of-state public school. It's possible that one parent will say, no, my obligation is only up to that in-state cost, if that's what's in the divorce agreement. And it may be up to the other parent. If they agree on that out-of-state school, they may have to pick up the rest or share it with their child somehow. Other states, college isn't required. The state won't mandate college. So hopefully both parents will agree to pay for college, but not always. So it may be left that it's important to one parent and not the other, and one parent just they'll figure it out. So it's very, very different by state. You can choose to pay 50-50. You can choose to do the pro rata shares. Maybe you'll alternate years. Maybe you'll want your child to pay a portion of it. But if you want your child to pay a portion of it, just know that for freshman year, and this changes every year that they're in college, freshmen can only take out up to $5,500 in student loans freshman year through the government. After that, if you want the student to have a loan, it's going to be a private loan, but then the parents need to sign on as co-signers. So ultimately, it'll still be your responsibility to make sure that it's paid and doesn't affect your credit at all.
In these decisions, like Vicki said, hopefully you could talk, but if there's been a breakdown in communication, you're not, you could bring in a mediator to help you too, because ultimately the state is going to require that you support your children going to college, and you don't want to litigate this because,
Depending on the state.
yeah, yes. But especially when it's time critical with college, like if they're a junior, you could go to court and it could take months and you need certainty. So the quicker and the more healthier way to do it is to both agree to find a mediator and both agree to talk to each other with a desire to compromise and come to a good decision together, if that's possible.
Yeah, and both Michael or myself can help people with that. So should I jump on to the next question? Or does anybody have any questions about this conversation? This topic? Okay, let's continue. So actually, the next one that I wrote down is my ex obligated to pay for college? So some states, yes, some states, no. And even in the states where I said some states, no, it really depends on what you have in your divorce agreement. What did you both agree to? If you both agreed to pay 50-50 for whatever college the child chooses to go to, then yes, they're obligated to pay for college. Michael, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, every divorce agreement that I've seen, there's some clause about college, so that's the first place to look. But if it isn't in there, again, I go back to having to talk to each other, and trying to come to a compromise, because there's obviously we all want our children to go to college, and we don't want to litigate it. So it's tough because, right, divorce is hard, and sometimes people are still holding bad feelings and they're not working together. So sometimes it's just not going to work. In that case, you may be better suited to hire a lawyer, but you have to do that earlier on because it does take some time and it's very expensive. And the challenge is it might be more expensive than the cost of college. So it's something that you really want to start early and try to come to a compromise before the child is just about ready to sign up, because then you're kind of in a state of paralysis.
Yeah, so in New York, I've seen too many divorce agreements where college isn't mentioned. And as I mentioned, New York State does recognize that the parents should contribute to the cost of college. But, maybe the children were very young and they just agreed to, oh, well, we'll revisit it when the kids get older. Now, if you wait till 12th grade to revisit it, right now for those that may have 12th graders or this time of year, the kids have already received their acceptances, they've received the costs. They have to let the schools know by May 1st where they're attending. There's no way if you wait till 12th grade that the parents would have it all worked out as to who's paying how much for what. So how do you make that college decision without knowing who's going to be able to pay for what? So yes, definitely talk about it sooner with a co-parent if possible. Now, I know that there's a question in the chat, what if you were never married? And even if you're never married, there's still two parents. So depending on the colleges that the child applies to, will impact what forms are needed, financial aid forms. Some schools will look just at one parent's household. Other schools will still look at both parents' household. Sorry, this is the part where I apologize before my dog wants to go out. I'll be right back. Sorry about that. She was sitting here scratching at the door. Okay, so where was I? Oh, so the financial aid forms. So some schools will require both parents' households to submit financial aid forms. Now, even if only one parent submits a financial aid form, that doesn't mean that only one parent is responsible for the bill. It's still two parents are responsible for the bill. So no matter what, even if you were never married, if there's acknowledgement that they're a parent and maybe they're paying child support or something, then they would still, should be responsible for college, depending on your state. Hope that helps. Okay, so next topic that always comes up is which parent completes FAFSA and which parent completes the CSS profile. And those were actually the two of the financial aid forms that I was just discussing. Some other schools also require they have their own institutional financial aid forms, but FAFSA and CSS are the big ones. So FAFSA, it used to be, and you may know that it was the custodial parent who filed the FAFSA application. And FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. It is no longer the custodial parent. It is now the parent who provides the most financial support for the child. That doesn't mean it's the parent who pays financial support. It's the one who who spends the most money on the kids. So I will sit down with parents and we'll go through like line by line and see who's spending the most on the kids to determine who should file FAFSA. Hopefully that'll work out so it's the parent that earns less money, but we'll figure it out together. If that parent is remarried, then you're doing it with the step parent. Even if the new step parent isn't contributing a dime towards the child's college costs, they're still going to ask for the step parents' information. They want all of the adults in the household, the adult parents. Now, the CSS profile, FAFSA is used for every single school in the country. No matter what, if you're filling out a financial aid form, and I certainly recommend that you do, I recommend it to everyone, regardless what their household income is. If you're going to, depending on the schools your child is going to, some schools will require what's called the CSS profile. Typically, it's for the schools that are more well recognized. If you see it on a bumper sticker or a sweatshirt, they may want you to fill out the CSS profile. I mean, that's like a broad generalization, but you get it. It's not every single school, but it's a lot of the better known names. The CSS profile schools typically, not always, but typically want financial information from both parents. And if both parents are remarried, now you're going to be submitting 4 parents worth of financial information, tax returns and assets. So part of what I do in working with divorced parents is steering them towards some schools versus other schools to minimize the need to show income and assets. We may try to stay clear of certain schools based on what their financial aid requirements are. So we started to allude to this. When is the best time to talk to an ex about college? The earlier, the better. I don't care how old the kids are. Do it as soon as you can. Just even to acknowledge that you're both on the same page with the child applying to college and you're both going to contribute something, or that you're both going to participate in financial aid applications if you both need to participate. I think that's the minimum language to include in a divorce agreement. Do you agree, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, with my clients, there's one of two things that we do. We either set up, first we talk about, are you both comfortable with the child carrying some debt, and whether you're comfortable with them going to community college to start to save some money, just to see if they're on the same page. After that, we try to talk about the funding, and we talk about, do you want to set it now based on your current proportions to proportional incomes, or later based on your proportional income at the time the child goes to college? The last option is sometimes we kick the can down the road and we have this very generic language that Vicki talked about, where the parents say, we're both committed to sending our kids to a school that's the best fit, that matches their talents and abilities and is cost effective. And we commit to funding that according to our means at the time. And that's generally the way they kick it. It's unfortunate. It pushes the conflict and the decision down the road, but it tells the judge, hey, we're going to do as best we could. The other thing I wanted to add when we talking about college, the other thing to talk about is whether you want to both commit to contributing to a 529 plan early on. Like, this is particularly effective if you have young children and you're going through a divorce. That's another topic I talk about. Do you have a college savings plan? And if you don't, once the dust settles, do you both want to make a commitment to each put $100 a month into an account for your kids, or whatever number is the right number, just to start buffering and saving for college?
Here, actually, I'll talk about a client that I met with yesterday. A couple who's divorcing. They do have a 529 plan. The student's in 12th grade. And I actually recommended that they split the money now into, it wasn't in a 529 rather, but just a general savings account, but for college purposes. And I recommended that they split that money now into 2 separate accounts. So let's just say it's $100,000. I said, put it 50 and 50. So that way they'll each be able to use it to pay for college. But I also said, because it's not going to fully cover college costs, that they're still going to have to keep saving money to be able to pay it down and minimize debt. But if one person wants to save $200 a month and the other only wants to save $100 a month, and maybe the one that saves only $100 a month, I'm making this up, they may end up having to take out student loans where the other parent doesn't. So that way, they're both in control of how they're going to be paying for college. So that was my suggestion to that client. So next question here, actually, somebody wrote here, how should you fill financial aid forms if you're still going through a divorce and your community assets are not yet divided and the standard restraining orders prevent you from liquidating the community assets? In other words, it looks like you have dollars, but you don't actually have access to the funds. So I can tell you right now, students that are graduating, let's just talk about seniors, high school seniors this year. So students that are graduating in spring 2025, June 2025, going to school fall 2025, for FAFSA, you're using 2023 tax returns. So likely your finances are very different now than they were at 2023. However, the financial aid forms are highly unflexible. You have to use 2023. So after you go through the process, you submit FAFSA with the right forms. You may be able to, depending on the date, just include your income, or you wait a little while through the process. The kids start to get their offers, and you can file an appeal based on the numbers if they didn't give you enough money, and then you say this is what's happening. There's paperwork to fill out. They'll ask you for updated financial information, and that's how you have the school review it all to adjust how much in aid they give. Now, depending on the schools, I mean, just saying, some schools are more generous than other schools. Out of state public universities are not always known for being the most generous. So I'm just putting that out there to you now. Do the school websites list who requires CSS profile and who doesn't? Yes, they will all list that on their financial aid section. Can we split costs 3 ways between parents and students? So let's talk about that. I know that in Illinois, Michael, you're right. Illinois, they say 3 ways. Now, for student loan purposes, I mentioned really it's up to $5,500 that the student can take out for federal student loans. But say the school is $60,000 a year, 20, and 20 for both mom, dad, and student. So say the student takes out the $5,500 in student loans, and you're going to want the $5,500 because that will be the lowest interest rate. They can take out the balance, the student, the $14,500, but it's going to need to be a cosigner. So both parents should talk about who's going to cosign what, when, if they want it to be equal all around, through the 4 years is my recommendation.
Yeah, one of the things that's come up with me is sometimes when we divide it, and the child has a percentage responsibility, the parents also agree if they get any scholarships, that goes against the child's share. Or if the grandparents want to fund something, that goes against the child's share. So even though the child's sharing it, they allocate all those funds to the child first to minimize their debt.
And with splitting the cost 3 ways, I've never seen that for those of you who are from New York, I've never seen that in a New York divorce agreement. However, if it's something that you both discuss ahead of time with your mediator, with your attorneys, it probably could be something that goes into the divorce agreement. You just have to, communicate and discuss it ahead of time. Okay, so another question that comes up all the time is, and I may have already answered this. If I fill out FAFSA, will I be responsible for all of the student loans? And the answer is no. Again, it's going to depend on what your agreement is with the other parent. But no, just because you fill out FAFSA doesn't mean you're responsible for all the loans. Both parents can take out Parent Plus loans. Both parents can take private loans. One parent can pay their portion in cash. The other one can pay their portion with a student loan. Another parent can, one parent can pay with a payment plan. Somebody else can do whatever that, they want. It's totally fine for each parent to do their own thing. So both parents are still responsible for their share, no matter if they're paying it up front, paying it over a payment plan, or taking out student loans to cover their specific costs. Will the college look at our divorce agreement and see how much each parent is responsible for? The colleges don't care. They don't want to look at your divorce agreement. Imagine you have an office and you have a limited number of staff. They are not getting into the weeds, going through everybody's divorce agreement. It's your responsibility to deal with the nonsense that occurs between you and a co-parent. All they care about is that the bill is going to be paid. So don't worry. They're not going to look to see, well, it says a 60-40 split, but the other parent is refusing to give me X number of dollars. They don't want to see what's in the divorce agreement. Michael, do you have anything you want to add to?
No, that's exactly right. That
Uh, um, so will the college look at our divorce agreement and see how much each parent is responsible for? No, they're not going to do that. Again, they just, if the bill's 60,000, they just want to know that they're going to get their 60,000, whether it's cash, whether it's through student loans, whatever it is. They just want to make sure that, the student is registered and that they're paid. A next question that comes up is about remarriage and financial aid. And if this applies to anybody, I'm going to tell you now. Please, please, please don't get remarried till after the kids are done with college. It does impact you. It does impact financial aid. Um, Sometimes I know love trumps all, but oh, I shouldn't have said that. But anyway, if you feel that you have to get married, and be happy, you know, uh, move forward, but it can impact you financially. Um,
Vicki, is
so
that because the schools are going to look at all the adults in the room and then that's going to minimize your financial aid?
right, right. It could
Yeah.
certainly hurt financially. Um, will the colleges take into account that we are divorced? So the colleges look at your household. Now, you could have a household where one parent earns $100,000 a year, or you can have a household where they're married and they each earn $50,000 a year, totaling the $100,000. They're likely going to qualify for very, very similar aid. So it's not because you're divorced. They're looking at the total income and assets. And it may just happen to be because of your divorce that your household now brings in less income, but there may be married people who are in similar financial situations. So I just want you to understand that it's more on a per household level than married versus divorced.
And we've got about 10 minutes before Q&A. So if you have questions, keep them locked and loaded, and we'll switch over to that shortly.
Michael, I know that you had some questions that you wanted to discuss.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things I see are, what are some of the key decisions parents could commit to in mediation? A lot of these we talked about, but do they want to agree up front that the child will only go to an in-state school? Are they open to a community college? Are they open to the student carrying some of the debt? Do they agree to support the best college for their children that's the right fit? Um, um, do they commit to funding college savings plans in advance? To soften the blow. And of course, the big one is how do we fund college? So those are a lot of the topics that we discuss in mediation. We also talk a little bit about, do they sometimes align on the logistics of college? Now, this is getting really into the weeds, but if you're on good terms with your former spouse, it's not a big deal. But some parents agree, hey, I'm going to drop the child off to college and you're going to pick him or her up. And the drop-off parent, there's a lot of expenses that go into that, right? You've got to stock the dorm, if it's an apartment. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. So there's some level of discussion of who's going to share the cost, who's going to be there for each of those responsibilities.
Can I jump in for a sec?
Sure.
Everyone should know college is not just about tuition and room and board costs. In addition to decorating the dorm room, there's sorority and fraternity costs, there's tutoring, there's all the college application fees, SAT prep, lots of different expenses to consider as you're preparing for college.
Yeah, and then the big one that I talk to all my clients about in my state, child support ends after they graduate from high school, more or less, when they turn 18 or graduate from high school. So there's no child support paid in my state when they go to college. However, when they go to college, they still come home for summer break, winter break, spring break. They have to live with somebody. There's a lot of expenses. So oftentimes we talk about how are we going to share those? Because the child is likely to live with the parent who's in the marital home if they still have it. Does the other parent contribute? And it's not just room and board. There's a lot of other expenses that kids incur after high school and before they have a job and can support themselves. There's auto insurance, that's a big one. Cell phones, health insurance. Health insurance, they could currently stay on your plan until they hit 26, and until most parents keep them on there. But there's a lot of these costs, and then there's
Dorm
grocery.
insurance, tuition insurance.
Yeah. So we often talk about child support formally ends, but you want to commit to continue to work together to support your child until they could support themselves or until they reach 26, or some age that they're comfortable with. Some parents have a difference of opinion that they feel the kids should just go out and be on their own. And so we try to align on what age is appropriate that the parents will share in that responsibility, because otherwise they stay with one parent and that parent carries a heavy load of additional costs. So,
And just so everybody's aware, that is not, New York is different. Typically, child support is, through college. But again, it's going to be whatever people agree to. But I believe the guidelines are through college or to age 22 after they graduate from college, for New York. But again, if you mediate, anything can be in the agreement. And last question here is, who's responsible for the child's care during college breaks? Again, you may want to communicate with the co-parent and with the child about where they're going, who they're visiting, when. You want to talk about that with mediation?
yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was talking about just previously is, you know, they're going to be home even, well, let's put it this way. If they go to college, they're going to be home for the summer, the winter, the spring. Some children don't go to college or they go to trade school and they live at home. I've had clients that went to trade school or cosmetology school or something else, and they lived at home, and the parents agreed to get an apartment for the child so they had somewhere to live, and they supported them on an allowance so they could get through their trade school and then afford to move on. Those are big expenses, and it's something to be talked about. It doesn't stop after high school, and certainly sometimes not after college until they get a job and they can support themselves.
Definitely. And then some kids want to go to grad school, and you need to think about that as well, and how best for them to do that. If kids are planning on going to medical school or law school, the schools still want to see the parents' financial information. So just be forewarned. um, so let's take the time and start opening it up for questions. If anyone has any, you could either say it aloud or put it in the chat. Maybe there's a topic you want us to dive into more on.
Hey there, I'm just driving, so I can't type it in the chat. So I hope that's okay. My question is basically about how early to have those conversations in mediation. We're approaching our first mediation, but our children are very young. We have 3, and our oldest is only 8. But I feel like the earlier we get ahead of these things, the better. Or is it typical for parents to go back to mediation when their kids kind of get closer to that age and they have a little more awareness of what's happening at that time? Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, how old are the kids?
They're 3. Sorry, I'm so excited about them. They're 3, 6, and 8.
Okay, very nice. I would certainly start the conversation now. I, I'm going to leave it mostly to Michael, but when I speak with younger families, we tend to talk about the types of schools that will look at one parent's information. We'll talk about the types of schools that look at both parents' information. We'll talk about in-state versus out-of-state publics versus privates, and what the costs are now, and and with the kids being so young, kind of guesstimate what those costs will likely be. We'll talk about saving money for college. What's the likelihood of financial aid based on your specific incomes, and finding private scholarships and how it works. But I would try to have the basic conversations with the other parent now. Michael, what would you add?
Yeah, CV, I don't know if you were on earlier, but we were talking about that just a little bit. And the more decisions you address early, the less conflict you're going to have later on. And the challenge is if you don't discuss it now, one or both of your financial situations is going to change, and it may work against you. So sometimes I always feel it's better to have some framework of a commitment to minimize somebody not complying later on or causing a bigger argument down the road. The biggest thing I would think about is what are both of your budgets and can you currently afford to put into a college savings plan now? Because you have the benefit of time right now. Your kids are mostly younger. So if you could both commit to proportional to income, pick a number, and Vicki could help you decide what's a good amount. Like, let's just say it's 300 a month, and maybe you both make the same income. So maybe you both commit to $150 a month going into their college savings plan. Start it now. You're going to make things easier. And then the other thing is, how do you fund it? That's the really, really big question. That's the hardest one. And if you could set up a framework now, it's going to be much easier than waiting till later.
The other thing is maybe you and your former spouse, maybe you both went to an in-state college, maybe you met there, and you value that, and that's something that's important to you, and you think it's important for your kids to go to in-state universities. Or maybe the exact opposite. You both went to private schools, you feel that is best for your children, and you want your children to have that opportunity. Those may be important discussions to have now also, to make sure that you're both going to be on the same page later.
Does that answer your question, or do you have a follow-up?
No, it does. That's helpful. Thank you so much.
Sure.
You're welcome. Who else has a question? Oh, wait, I see some stuff here. I think I'm seeing, wait. Is it worth it to return to mediation just to discuss post-high school funding split? Our daughter is a high school junior now. We unfortunately have a contentious situation, and right now our agreement only goes till age 18. The thought of returning to those discussions makes me ill. I get that. But I also don't want to be stuck with all the costs after she's 18, particularly because he got remarried and makes more money than me. We do have the Connecticut in-state school allowance in our agreement for college, but I'm more worried about all the other associated expenses with college, post-college. Can I ask, when you say return to mediation, was mediation the route you went initially?
Yeah, we did. We went through mediation, and it was not fun. And so right now our agreement goes until age 18, and Connecticut has the same, I think, law as New York does, where you can put a clause in there about just paying what the in-state tuition rate would be for UConn. So that is currently in there, but all of the other, child support and all that stops at age 18. So my question is it even, and like, obviously in retrospect, right, it would have been great had we been able to come to those agreements to have a more clear understanding of the finances, but it was so contentious just to figure out our living situation at that point that, we kicked college down the road a little bit, and we don't speak now, unfortunately. And so I guess my question is, is it worth it to go back to mediation to talk about that? Or is it, something that, in your experience with other divorced couples has sort of been, it's almost not worth it?
And do me a favor, remind me, high school junior.
Yes.
This is my recommendation.
Okay.
Send your former partner an email.
Okay.
Just to say you're hoping that both of you can speak, so-and-so's in 11th grade now. We're going to be starting to plan for college soon. Can we meet at a Starbucks and discuss college planning?
Or Vicki, let me jump in because I was part of a divorce similar to the one that she referred to. If they're not speaking, it's hard. You could even do it in an email. Just make sure you're comprehensive in all the costs. There's rent, there's groceries, there's the cell phone, the auto insurance, the health insurance.
Right.
I would if he makes more than you might want to recommend, can we split that? What are your thoughts about splitting it proportional to income?
Right.
Worst case, even if you get him to agree to 50-50, that's going to be better than him just balking. But I don't know your financial situation. But if you don't get an email response, the last thing you want to do is litigate it.
I know.
Right. That's why I'm saying, like, try on your own first, and then when you get no response, you escalate it. But try, at least opening up the conversation. And you may not get a response initially, but maybe the next time, a month later when you bring it up again, maybe eventually you'll get a response.
Yeah, I think I will. I've emailed him and asked him to meet actually at a coffee spot, just what you said, and I got rejected a few times. So I'll just keep at it. And I do think that, Michael, you're right too. Just having things in writing is probably the way to go and just see, what I can get.
Yeah, a lot of divorce agreements have a clause at the end that says, if there's a conflict, you both agree to mediate instead of litigate. So you could kind of open
Right.
up that clause and say, hey, I'm not getting a response, so I don't want to go to court, so I am going to hire a mediator, or if you want to be involved in that process, let me know. Otherwise, my last resort is litigation. That may not work for you, right? If he makes a lot more money and he could afford to litigate, he could drown you in delays and expenses.
Yeah,
It's a really tough situation.
yeah. Thank you. I
Does he
appreciate
have a relationship with your child?
Not really. No.
Right.
So that's another very complicating factor. And it's funny, when you said don't get remarried, I was like, yeah, there's that too. So interesting thing, but thank you both. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay, let's see. Do you offer consultations? Stephanie, I don't know if you're asking me or Michael, but I'm assuming the answer is yes to both. Yes, I offer consultations. Let's see. Can go on my website at collegefinancialprep.com. There is a blue button to schedule a brief call. And yes, I'm not going to answer how do you fill out line 47 there. But yeah, we could talk about the process and start creating a little bit of strategy for you.
And Vicki, there's a comment in the group chat that went to everyone. I'm going back to court for support and plan to address college. What should I ask for besides a split up to the SUNY cap? Right now, the kids are in 6th and 7th grade.
If you're going back to court. So college currently is not addressed. Yeah, I would ask for college to be addressed. But if you're going to court, the court is going to say the SUNY cap. And typically pro rata shares.
But this is where you could also ask for the room and board and the contribution to auto insurance and cell phone and all these other expenses that still continue, health insurance, all the.
Well, health insurance is part of it.
So that you had mentioned, I'm sorry, I'm jumping in on my question. Tutoring, application fees. So, SAT prep, are these things that I can ask for when we go back?
Yes, certainly ask for it. I mean, I'm going to be candid. I'm not an attorney. I don't know how it will go, but yeah, it doesn't hurt asking.
Okay.
I mean, do you have a clause in your agreement about how you're sharing educational costs?
No. So we were never married.
Okay.
So there is a support agreement, there is a custody agreement, but everything went, through the, it wasn't a custody, it wasn't typical because it wasn't a divorce. Right. So everything is true through, child support collections, and he wouldn't agree to a support agreement that would have had all of that stuff in it unless I agreed to take bare bones for support. So I said, forget it. And so that wasn't put in. And now there comes a time, he has a daughter from a previous marriage who's coming off. So there needs to be some adjustments to the support in terms of everything. So while I have the door open, I know to ask for the SUNY cap, but I didn't realize that I could ask for other things.
You could ask for anything. It doesn't have to be SUNY cap, but that's likely what a court would give.
Correct, because we were never married either, so it's really,
and just because it says SUNY cap doesn't mean that your child is forced to go to a SUNY school.
Correct.
It means that if a SUNY is going to cost $30,000 a year, they're obligated to pay their share up to that cost. So say they get a great scholarship to school ABC and it matches an in-state university, they can go to that school.
Right. So, yeah. But so like, for instance, Michael asked, what is covered, what's addressed in terms of education. Right now, nothing is. I pay beyond the basic support. I pay for everything else. I pay for everything educational. I pay for everything extracurricular. I pay for everything camp. You name it, I pay for it. All I get is basic support. So I want to know, and not that the magistrate's going to give me any of this, but like you said, I can ask, and the worst happens is they say no.
Right, right.
Okay. Yeah, because right now I get nothing. Like if my kid needs a tutor, I have to pay for that out of my pocket. Thank you.
I don't know if it'll apply here or not. I'm just going to say it anyway. Like, I know times where I've had to go back to court.
Right.
Just think about, and college is a big nut, so I get it. But with all the extra stuff, just think about your mental sanity and how much it's worth, and is it worth doing? Because not only the money that you're spending to go back, but yeah,
it's the stress.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I remember saying to somebody once, is my sanity worth this? Like, I probably wasn't worth doing. So.
No, because I'll do anything I have to. That's the bottom line. It's nice if it's matched, but if it's not,
right.
Then it's not going to stop me from doing anything and everything I can do for my children.
Right.
But those costs are very extensive. They add up a lot. So I think if you're going to court and you're spending the money, ask for everything, because a good negotiation, you ask for everything, and even if you get half of it, it's more than if you didn't ask for it at all. So
absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
And any other questions? No other questions? I know that there's always like lots of stuff on this topic.
the one thing I would say is, you're all at various stages. What do they say? You go through a divorce and the house is the biggest asset. To me, college is the biggest expense, and the biggest responsibility and the biggest desire we have as parents. So like, the earlier you are in the process, I would really encourage you to talk to Vicki. I did not have Vicki at my disposal, and I think we probably could have saved some money, or at least done some things differently, perhaps. So I think it's a good resource to use and leverage, because this is a big chunk of not only if it's a big expense, but you want your child to have a good, positive experience.
And the other thing I'll say about that is, if you can, I know I mentioned communication before. Talk to your kids, talk to your spouse. Don't say, how much you earn or how much you have in assets, but say, this is what I have saved for college. This is what my goals are for you. And I think it could help if you open the conversation earlier rather than later. Don't wait till mid-April and decision day is May 1st, and then all of a sudden have to disappoint. Make sure everybody's on the same page earlier on. Any other questions for tonight? No? Well, if you want, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Michael or myself. Michael, you want to share where everyone can find you?
Sure. My website is michaelsmediation.com, or my direct number is 224-544. Why am I drawing a blank? I've drawn a blank. Okay, go to Michael's
It's a Sunday night. It's okay.
It's been a long day.
Do you have the number or no?
Go ahead. Yes. 224-544-9990. I never call myself.
And if you want to check out my website or be in touch, the website is www.collegefinancialprep.com. I do work with everybody, married, divorced, widowed, any situation. Though the bulk of the work that I do is separation and divorce. There's actually a specific page on the website for divorce. So collegefinancialprep.com/divorce if you're interested in that. In addition to the one-on-one work, I'm now starting to offer some online courses. So lots of stuff there for people to see. But yeah, feel free, connect and schedule a call. Did I just one new message? Wait a sec. Oh, this has been very helpful. Thank you very much. Have a great night. Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'll give you a call. Thank you.
Sounds great. Talk
Okay.
to you soon.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. And I'm going to stop the recording.